So in this segment, we're going to be talking about unionist politician tried to dilute UK bill aimed at the Northern Ireland Protocol. So this is referencing the Northern Ireland Protocol bill that the UK is currently passing, and this is specifically talking about Edwin Poots. So one of Northern Ireland's leading unionist politicians lobbied the British government to dilute the legislation that gives UK ministers powers to tear up the protocol governing trade in Northern Ireland, according to a letter seen by the Financial Times. The DUPs expressed support for the legislation, which threatens to unilaterally sweep away the so-called Northern Ireland Protocol. So effectively it would give ministers the power to suspend parts of the protocol at will, unilaterally. The more you read the article, the more it makes me think the DUP hate farmers in Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland dairy businesses are tied to Ireland. One produces the milk and the other one pasteurises it. There's a typo there. With a hard border on the island of Ireland, that business model is dead. And so you'd be putting a lot of farmers out of business. Former DUP leader Edwin Poots wrote to the UK government last July while serving as Northern Ireland's agriculture minister to argue that the region's farmers would be better off under the protocol. Wow. Now, they do make the subsidies argument, but it's clear that Northern Ireland is reliant on Ireland for processing certain animal products. In the context of farming, there are other things that would be relevant, but I'm no expert in this area. But the subsidies are the key argument and the key points that Poots puts through. Poots defended his move, arguing that while the protocol was wholly unacceptable, it was entirely reasonable to be able to support farmers. There's nothing wrong with cherry picking. I mean, if that's the case, that Poots likes part of the protocol, it means that maybe farmers in Northern Ireland might be able to put pressure on the DUP, depending on how farmers in Northern Ireland typically vote. Article 10 of the protocol left Northern Irish goods and agricultural support subject to the EU state aid regime, but the region was granted a generous £382 million annual exemption for farm subsidies. In the letter to George Eustace, the then Environment Secretary, DEFRA, Poots said it was unacceptable that Northern Ireland Protocol Bill, if enacted, would force the region's farmers to accept the same agricultural subsidy regime as the rest of the UK. It shows you that the UK subsidy scheme for farmers is very bad versus the common agricultural policy of the EU. This will potentially cost farmers millions in subsidies. Why they're not speaking out, or at least come out anonymously. It does show you that, the dude's a fan of some parts of the protocol, and maybe this gives more credence to the idea that there is some sort of compromise here, because if the DUP want to get rid of the protocol, they will be actively making it so goods are more expensive in Northern Ireland in terms of food, because food is cheaper in Northern Ireland than it is in the rest of GB, but it also would damage farmers massively financially. So the question is, why do the DUP hate farmers? One senior industry figure said the protocol had allowed Poots to provide £50 million in support for beef and other farmers to enable them to produce sustainably. With the protocol, he could avail the option of putting the £50 million into those measures. The person said, adding that farmers in other parts of the UK were envious of them. If the bill were passed, he said, we would have absolutely no idea what future policy is. This shows that the protocol was at least giving farmers direct support. Northern Ireland farmers win a lot in the protocol versus, Great British farmers. Northern Ireland farmers keep their supply lines into Ireland. They do lose supply from GB for any input supplies they need, but they have multiple other countries they can use to try and get supplies from if needed. Also, they get more in subsidies, but also get to keep access to the EU single market to export their products with no checks. GB farmers cannot do that, and it's costing them. So there are so many potential wins here. I do wonder if the subsidies to farms are still being rolled out because Stormont is closed. The DUP's leader, Donaldson, has said the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement will pass with no government in Northern Ireland unless the protocol is dropped. Sunak promised to resolve the protocol issues by the anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement. He made that promise to President Joe Biden. Now, he'll get the DUP, and now how he'll get the DUP to go back is beyond me, but, it's that Westminster is moving in one direction and the DUP are moving in the other. How much this will cost the people in Northern Ireland, and in this case, specifically the farmers, is beyond me. And the question is, for the audience, is why do the DUP hate farmers in Northern Ireland? They're taking away a lot of their export market through the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill, which they support, and also it looks like they're trying to take away a lot of their subsidies. And Edwin Poots can talk about cherry picking, but maybe that's one of the compromises he could have got in the negotiations between Westminster and Brussels. But the guy is pretending not to be a fan when, in my opinion, it looks like he's a bit of a fanboy when it comes to specific parts like the subsidies. Anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.